"We're done here. Leave," said Stephen Colbert. What began as a standard promotional appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert quickly descended into television infamy last night, as billionaire Elon Musk suffered an unprecedented emotional breakdown on live television. The exchange, which started with subtle jabs but escalated to scathing criticism, has left the tech mogul's carefully crafted image in shambles and set social media ablaze. The studio lights seemed particularly harsh that evening as Stephen Colbert strode onto the stage of The Late Show to thunderous applause. His signature confidence was on full display, but those familiar with the host's mannerisms noticed a certain edge to his smile, a subtle indication that tonight's show might deviate from the usual light-hearted banter. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have a very special guest," Colbert announced, his voice carrying that familiar blend of charm and irony. "A man who's been called a genius, a visionary, and according to at least 3 former employees, that guy who wouldn't stop talking about Mars during lunch breaks." The audience laughed appreciatively as Colbert continued. "Please welcome the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, and whatever company he's impulsively purchased while I was introducing him, Elon Musk." The applause was mixed with excited murmurs as Musk emerged from backstage. He wore his typical attire, a dark blazer over a plain t-shirt, and walked with that slightly awkward gait that had become part of his public persona. Initially, he seemed relaxed, offering a small wave to the audience before settling into the guest chair. "Welcome to the show, Elon," Colbert began, his tone deceptively casual. "It's been quite a year for you, hasn't it? Or should I say, quite a year for your publicity team?" Musk chuckled, but those watching closely might have noticed how the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Always busy times, Stephen. But we're making progress across all fronts." "Progress," Colbert repeated, drawing out the word. "That's an interesting choice of terminology. Some might call it progress when a rocket successfully launches. Others might use the same word when a social media platform loses half its value after an acquisition." The audience responded with a mixture of gasps and nervous laughter. Musk's posture stiffened visibly. "Well, market fluctuations are inevitable in any business venture. The long-term vision is what matters." Speaking of long-term visions, Colbert pressed on, ignoring the growing discomfort emanating from his guest. "I've been meaning to ask, what exactly is the vision behind those recent layoffs at Tesla? Was it the same vision that inspired the workplace conditions that 3 separate investigations have called concerning?" The studio temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The audience, usually quick to follow Colbert's lead with laughter, remained uncomfortably silent. Musk shifted in his seat, his fingers drumming nervously against the armrest. "Those reports are fundamentally misrepresentative," Musk countered, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "We maintain some of the highest employee satisfaction rates in the industry. The restructuring was necessary to fund another vanity project?" Colbert interjected. The interruption wasn't playful banter anymore. There was a calculated precision to it, like a predator that had been circling and finally decided to strike. Or perhaps to cushion the blow from that autonomous vehicle demonstration where your self-driving car mistook a cardboard cutout for an actual pedestrian. Cameras caught the moment perfectly. The slight widening of Musk's eyes, the tightening of his jaw. This wasn't the good-natured ribbing that celebrities typically endured on late-night shows. This was something else entirely. "That was an isolated incident during a beta test," Musk replied, his voice noticeably cooler. "All emergent technologies face challenges during development. What matters is how we respond and improve." Colbert leaned forward, elbows on his desk. "And how have you responded to the challenges of your employees who've reported 80-hour workweeks? Or the engineers who were fired after raising safety concerns? Or the customers waiting years for vehicles they've already paid deposits on?" The veneer of civility was rapidly dissolving. Behind Musk, the house band exchanged uneasy glances. The show's producer could be seen frantically whispering to an assistant just off camera. "Those are complex situations being grossly oversimplified," Musk responded, color rising to his cheeks. "The work we're doing is transformative. Revolutionary change doesn't happen without sacrifice." "Ah, sacrifice," Colbert nodded, his expression one of mock understanding. "Though it seems the sacrifices are rarely yours to make, aren't they?" He turned to the audience with theatrical timing. "Isn't it fascinating how billionaires always preach about necessary sacrifices from the comfort of their private jets?" The audience, caught between discomfort and the infectious pull of Colbert's charisma, offered scattered laughter. Musk's fingers had stopped drumming and now gripped the armrest tightly. "I've lived in the factory during production crises," Musk countered, his voice rising slightly. "I've put everything on the line multiple times when my companies were days from bankruptcy." "Everything except your lifestyle, apparently," Colbert retorted without missing a beat. "Tell me, during these challenging periods, did you ever consider selling one of your mansions? Or perhaps downgrading from a Gulfstream to a merely luxurious commercial first-class experience?" The tension in the studio was becoming unbearable. Even the most media-trained viewers at home could sense that this had crossed from entertainment into something uncomfortably personal. Sweat was now visible on Musk's forehead under the harsh studio lights. "That's not... You're deliberately..." Musk struggled to form a coherent response, visibly rattled by the aggressive line of questioning. "This interview was supposed to be about our renewable energy initiatives and the Mars mission timeline." Colbert's smile was razor-sharp. "Yes, let's talk about Mars. Specifically, let's talk about promising to solve Earth's problems while simultaneously planning an escape route for the elite few who can afford the ticket. Does that strike you as ironic at all?" As cameras zoomed in on Musk's increasingly flustered expression, viewers at home and audience members alike realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. The careful construction of Elon Musk's public image beginning to fracture under the relentless pressure of Colbert's questioning. And then came the moment that would launch 1,000 memes and commentary videos. Musk's voice cracked as he attempted to respond, a barely perceptible tremor that betrayed the emotions he was fighting to contain. "You have no idea the pressure," he began, before stopping abruptly, his composure visibly slipping with each passing second. The studio fell utterly silent, every eye and camera fixed on the unfolding human drama that no publicist could have prepared for. Colbert, sensing blood in the water, leaned forward with the practiced precision of a television veteran. "Pressure? I'd imagine it's quite pressurizing to juggle multiple companies while maintaining your status as the world's most terminally online billionaire." His delivery was smooth, but there was something almost predatory in his gaze now. "Though perhaps not as pressurizing as working conditions in your factories, according to those 3 class action lawsuits." Musk's breathing had become noticeably irregular, his chest rising and falling in an uneven rhythm that the high-definition cameras captured with merciless clarity. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its usual confidence, replaced by something raw and unexpectedly vulnerable. "You sit there," Musk said, his words barely above a whisper, forcing the audience to lean forward in their seats. "Behind your desk, making jokes. Do you have any concept of what it means to actually build something? To create technology that pushes human potential forward?" Something flashed in Colbert's eyes. Perhaps the briefest moment of doubt, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The late-night host was too seasoned to abandon his trajectory now. "I'm fairly certain that pushing human potential forward doesn't require calling rescue divers pedos on social media or tanking your own stock with ill-advised tweets," he countered, his tone deliberately casual, as though they were discussing the weather rather than dismantling a man's reputation in real time. The audience's reaction was mixed. Uncomfortable shifting in seats, punctuated by nervous laughter from those who still viewed this as entertainment rather than the public execution of a carefully cultivated image. "You know what?" Musk's voice had found a new, dangerous steadiness. This is exactly what's wrong with our discourse today. You invite me here under false pretenses, not for actual conversation, but for accountability, Colbert interjected, his eyebrows raised in theatrical innocence. Is that suddenly a problem for the self-proclaimed champion of free speech? The camera caught it perfectly, the exact moment when something fundamental changed in Musk's expression. His eyes, usually calculated and controlled even in adversity, began to glisten under the studio lights. "I have dedicated my life," Musk said, his voice trembling with emotion that no media training could conceal, "to advancing sustainable energy and making humanity a multiplanetary species. I've risked everything repeatedly. You think this is about money or ego?" Colbert's response was immediate, practiced, lethal. "Well, when you name your child after what appears to be a Wi-Fi password, it does raise some questions about the ego involved." The quip landed with devastating precision. A ripple of shocked laughter spread through the audience, followed immediately by a collective intake of breath as they witnessed the unthinkable. A single tear tracking down the cheek of one of the world's most powerful men. In the production booth, panic was setting in. The show's executive producer was frantically signaling to cut to commercial, but Colbert, sensing historic television in the making, subtly waved them off. The house band, usually ready with musical interludes to diffuse tension, sat frozen, instruments untouched. "You think this is funny?" Musk's voice cracked, the words emerging in a staccato pattern between shallow breaths. "You sit there, in your bubble, while I'm trying to solve existential problems like buying social media platforms to silence critics?" Colbert pressed, refusing to relent even as the human cost of his verbal assault became increasingly apparent. "Or promising technological solutions that conveniently require consumers to purchase your products." Musk's hand trembled as he reached for the water glass on the side table, knocking it over in his agitation. The spill created a dark stain on his pants leg, adding visual humiliation to the psychological dismantling already underway. A production assistant rushed forward with napkins but retreated immediately when Colbert shot them a warning glance. "Every innovation faces criticism," Musk managed, dabbing ineffectually at his pants with his bare hand. "History vindicates those who push boundaries. In 50 years, when we're a sustainable multiplanetary civilization, if there is a civilization left after billionaires finish extracting every resource for their space fantasies," Colbert interrupted, his voice dripping with disdain, "tell me, in this utopian future, will your workers still be prevented from unionizing? Will employees of color still report systemic discrimination? Will you still fire people who raise safety concerns?" The audience was no longer laughing at all. The atmosphere had transcended entertainment and entered some uncomfortable liminal space between voyeurism and public reckoning. Social media was exploding with real-time reactions. The show's hashtag was trending globally within minutes. That's not," Musk struggled, visibly fighting against emotions that threatened to overwhelm him completely. Another tear escaped, then another. The mask of the confident tech visionary was disintegrating on national television. "You don't understand what it's like. Everyone watching, waiting for failure. I imagine your former employees felt something similar," Colbert remarked, his tone softer now but somehow more devastating for it. "Particularly those who reported, working under constant surveillance and threat of termination." Something broke in Musk then, visibly, undeniably. His shoulders slumped forward as tears began flowing freely down his face. The studio audience, witnessing this unprecedented display of vulnerability from a man whose brand was built on unshakable confidence, collectively held their breath. "I've sacrificed everything," Musk whispered, his voice barely audible. "My relationships, time with my children, my mental health. And for what? To be a punchline on your show?" For the first time that evening, Colbert seemed momentarily taken aback by the raw humanity before him. A flicker of something, perhaps regret, perhaps simply calculation, crossed his features. But before he could respond, Musk continued, his voice gaining strength even as tears continued to fall. "Do you have any idea what it's like?" The billionaire's voice rose, emotion overtaking media training entirely. "To carry the weight of humanity's future on your shoulders while everyone waits for you to fail?" The studio had become a pressure cooker of tension. Audience members exchanged uncomfortable glances. The show's producer was frantically signaling again, this time with greater urgency. But Colbert, sensing the dramatic crescendo building toward something unprecedented in late-night television history, pressed on. "And yet," Colbert said, his voice adopting a deceptively thoughtful tone, "with all that pressure you still find time to undermine scientists on climate change, attack journalists who question your methods, and post bizarre conspiracy theories at 3 in the morning." He leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual disdain. Interesting prioritization for someone carrying humanity's future. Something fundamental shifted in Musk's demeanor. The tears still glistened on his cheeks, but his expression hardened into something new, a dangerous combination of humiliation and rage. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a near whisper that somehow commanded more attention than any shout could have. "You think you're clever, don't you? Sitting behind that desk, reading jokes written by 20-something Ivy League graduates who've never built anything in their lives." Musk's hands were trembling visibly, but there was a newfound intensity in his gaze. "You have no idea what it takes to create something real, something that changes the world." The audience was utterly silent now, all pretense of entertainment abandoned. This wasn't the polished, controlled celebrity interview they had come to see. It was something raw and uncomfortable and impossible to look away from. Colbert, sensing the shift, doubled down. "Speaking of changing the world, let's discuss those autonomous cars that keep crashing, shall we? Or perhaps the Hyperloop that never materialized? Or maybe the robot that was supposed to revolutionize manufacturing but instead stumbled across a stage like a freshman after their first frat party." In the control room, chaos erupted. The executive producer was shouting into his headset. Directors were frantically cutting between camera angles, trying to capture every nuance of this career-defining meltdown. Social media metrics on the monitors showed engagement numbers shattering previous records as clips began circulating in real time. Musk's breathing had become audibly labored. He tugged at his collar as if it were constricting him, the composed tech mogul persona completely abandoned now. "You want to talk failures? Let's talk about how your ratings have been sliding for years. Let's talk about how you've become nothing but a mouthpiece for—" "For what?" Colbert interrupted, his smile tight and predatory. "For accountability? For questioning whether billionaires should operate with impunity? Please, enlighten us." The stage lights seemed to intensify, bathing both men in harsh illumination that highlighted every micro-expression. Musk's face contorted through a series of emotions: humiliation, rage, desperation, before settling into something resembling grim determination. "You know what?" Musk said, suddenly wiping the tears from his face with the back of his hand. "This isn't an interview. It's an ambush. A character assassination disguised as entertainment." "Or perhaps," Colbert countered smoothly, "it simply questions you're not accustomed to facing. Funny how accountability feels like an attack when you've insulated yourself with wealth and yes men." Without warning, Musk stood up, the abrupt movement causing his chair to topple backward with a startling crash. The audience gasped collectively. The house band, poised to play during any awkward moment, remained frozen, instruments untouched. This had transcended the territory of anything their cheerful interludes could salvage. "You think you're exposing some truth?" Musk's voice had risen to a shout now, all media training forgotten. "You're creating spectacle, generating clicks. You don't care about the truth or innovation or the future." Spittle flew from his lips as he gestured wildly, tears still streaming down his face. People like you are why progress is so difficult. Tearing down instead of building. Colbert remained seated, maintaining a facade of composure even as the situation spiraled beyond anything in the show's history. If asking basic questions about labor practices and failed promises constitutes tearing down, perhaps the foundation wasn't particularly solid to begin with. The comment landed like a physical blow. Musk visibly recoiled, then reached up to remove his microphone with trembling fingers. When he failed to detach it, he simply ripped it from his collar, taking a small piece of fabric with it. "We're done here," he announced, his voice cracking with emotion. "Completely done." "Are you sure?" Colbert asked with exaggerated concern. "We haven't even gotten to the part about your father yet. Or those tweets about Thailand. Or the SEC violations." Something primal flashed across Musk's face then. A mixture of rage and wounded vulnerability that no amount of wealth or success could shield him from. He took a lurching step toward Colbert's desk, causing security personnel to edge forward from the wings. "You think this is funny?" Musk's voice had risen to a near scream, tears flowing freely now. "You think destroying someone on national television makes you clever? Makes you important?" "I think," Colbert replied with deadly calm, "that it makes for compelling television when powerful men are asked the same questions their employees, customers, and shareholders have been asking for years." In a move that would be replayed and analyzed for weeks to come, Musk suddenly slammed his hand down on Colbert's desk, causing pens and papers to scatter. "You smug, self-righteous," he began, before choking on his words, overwhelmed by emotion. The studio audience was in shock, some covering their mouths, others recording with their phones despite the strict no-recording policy. In the control room, executives were already drafting emergency press statements while simultaneously delighting in the viral goldmine unfolding on their stage. "Mr. Musk," Colbert said, his voice icily calm in contrast to his guest's disintegration, "I think you might want to consider—" "Consider what?" Musk shouted, backing away from the desk, his face contorted with humiliation and rage. "Consider how this hatchet job will play on social media. Consider how you've edited and manipulated this to maximize damage." "This is live television," Colbert reminded him with a small, devastating smile. "No edits, no manipulation. Just you, me, and about 3 million viewers at home witnessing authentic, what shall we call it? Innovation in emotional expression?" It was the final straw. With a strangled sound that was half sob, half scream, Musk turned and stormed toward the exit, stumbling slightly on the cable of the microphone he'd ripped off. A production assistant tried to intercept him, presumably to direct him to the proper backstage area, but Musk shoved past without acknowledgement. The audience watched in stunned silence as one of the world's richest men fled the stage in tears. For a moment, the only sound was Musk's receding footsteps and the faint murmur of shocked voices. Colbert, ever the professional, turned to camera, one with a composed expression that betrayed nothing of the chaos that had just unfolded. "Well, folks, I guess space travel isn't the only thing that can leave you breathless." His timing was impeccable, his delivery flawless. "We'll be right back after these messages from sponsors who, unlike our previous guest, actually fulfilled their promises." As the show cut to commercial, the studio erupted into frenzied activity. Production assistants huddled in corners, speaking urgently into headsets. The audience buzzed with excitement and disbelief, already reaching for phones that had been stored away during filming. Behind the scenes, Musk was being escorted to a private exit, his security team forming a protective barrier around their employer, whose face was buried in his hands. The meltdown wasn't over. It was simply continuing away from the cameras that had captured his public unraveling. By morning, the incident would be international news. Clips would circulate on every platform, analyzed by body language experts and PR professionals alike. Musk's companies would issue statements about deceptive interview practices, while Colbert's team would simply let the footage speak for itself. For viewers and commentators, the night would represent something deeper than mere entertainment, a rare moment when the carefully constructed facade of a tech titan crumbled under precisely targeted pressure, revealing the fragile human ego that had always lurked beneath the veneer of visionary genius. As the studio lights dimmed on the empty guest chair, still toppled over from Musk's dramatic exit, Colbert allowed himself a small, private smile of satisfaction. Tonight, ratings would soar. Tomorrow, think pieces would proliferate. And forever. After this interview would be remembered as the moment when Stephen Colbert did what no regulatory agency, business rival, or media outlet had managed to do. He broke Elon Musk.